Lost both teams. Get a grip on this operation, Heather. That's bored. Green light the asset.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Bourne.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. I am your host, Dave Bourne, and it is January 24th, 2017, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, on the Nonpartisan Liberty for All media and radio network, which now runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can listen to the live stream on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote self-ownership and the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom. Exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And we are always happy to hear from you. And you can reach us via phone at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or via Skype, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Just send us a contact request with your name and what you want to talk about. And you could check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, where you can get that information if you forget the phone number or username, as well as a bunch of articles / blogs and other things, other contact information, links to our social media, Facebook and Twitter pages, and more. So be sure to check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. You can also get those numbers, the number and the username from the event page as well, if you forget throughout the show and actually want to call in, although no one's called in for a while. But we'd love to hear from you, and your opinion is always a welcome, whether you disagree or agree or think I suck or whatever. So tonight, I really didn't want to cover this issue, but I felt like it was something that I had to cover, and that it does relate to what we promote on this show. It does relate to freedom and liberty and what other people are trying to do to really combat that. I think that what we're going to talk about tonight is all people that are actually trying to combat that, whether they're doing it consciously or they're just trying to promote their views or their political operatives or whatever. But I think all the people we're going to talk about tonight, I would consider totally anti-freedom. Although some believe, because of this, and we'll get into this, and we've talked about it before, this positive freedom, which is an oxymoron, really. There's no such thing. And we'll talk about it in detail later. But because of that they believe they're freedom fighters when they're really fighting to attack freedom. So what we're going to talk about is, of course, the inauguration and the protest that happened over the weekend. Now, I'm not really going to talk much about the inauguration itself because I could fucking care less, and that's not what we're about. Whereas all these other stations covered the actual inauguration. I heard some of the speech, and that's really irrelevant for the most part to what we're going to talk about today. We will talk about Trump, but more in terms of what they're protesting and how that relates to what he said and what he's going to do. Or really, you can't really say what he's going to do, but you can just base it off of what he said he's going to do and what he's done, I guess, in 2 days, which he's already signed some executive orders and some minor things like that. The TPP being one of them, where he essentially stopped that. So that was a positive thing. But he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't do it to stop it from going through for the sake of it being something that leads to global government and also takes away a lot of freedoms. It's not just a trade agreement. It's a fucking like 30 chapter document. It may be more now. I mean, the first time I saw it was 2013. And he's doing it more because he's saying that, well, there's a trade deficit, and in that trade deficit, the U.S. is getting screwed, and he wants to make sure that there's fair trade and all of that shit. So, I mean, really, if anything, the only things I think you're going to see possibly different from Trump, and maybe you won't even see much of it, because I'm starting to think that Trump won for a reason. The powers that be wanted him to win because of the protest and the resistance to him. And what's being protested, I think, is what the powers that be actually want to bring in. So, I mean, I don't know. It's all speculation, of course, but I think either way that he's controlled to a certain point. Now, you know, he may come in there and create a bunch of jobs and do all that. But when it comes to freedom, I mean, as far as at least what he said and people that he's put in, including the CIA director, who's come out and already said that they probably have this anyway, who said he wants to expand things. He also kind of lied in his, he did an op-ed and said that things after Snowden, that things were rolled back, and nothing was fucking rolled back. But he wants to go beyond that. And he's already said that Trump said he's giving the CIA a blank check. Those were his exact words. He's also talked about increasing the military and, you know, giving the police pretty much what they want. And we'll get into that more later. So all of those things are all things that the last 3 presidents have done. Hillary would have done it too. And that's my point. When it comes to freedom and liberty and taking away more freedom and the government taking more control and more power, it doesn't matter who's in office. That's the agenda. Now, that doesn't mean that whoever's in there, the things that aren't as important aren't, there's not going to be different things there, obviously. But when it comes to whatever's in that agenda of what I call the powers that be, which is a makeup of, I think, and again, this is just my opinion, that the people that really run things is a combination of corporations, billionaires that you don't even know their names, and the groups like the CFR and the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations, and then the billionaires that you do know their names, like Rockefeller, and they're all part of those groups too, so they would be included in there. And then politicians, I think, depending on who you are, because some of the some of the Rockefellers were politicians, so depending on who you are, you may have some input in different things, but I think it's more the people behind the congressman or the president that are the people that have input, because they're the ones that have the intelligence and are running things, behind the scenes, and they're able to calculate all these things and come up with all these ideas and things along those lines. So that's my opinion. I do know, well, I wouldn't say I know, but it's pretty much just common sense that you don't have any say in the government and that the government is an oligarchy, whether you believe that it's the government, the congressman, and the president running things or not. You don't have any say. And you can prove it. I mean, try getting something done. Or try getting something done that actually means anything. I mean, maybe you could somehow get something that's totally irrelevant somehow passed. And that's probably, you have to know somebody to even get it looked at. But even on a state level, I think it's a complicated thing. And on a local level, if you live maybe in a small town, but if you live in a city, it's not going to matter. Sorry, I'm being distracted by some background noise coming from another room. But hopefully it's not being picked up on the mic, but it is kind of throwing me off, unfortunately. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Again, I really want to stay away from covering the president and government as much as I can as far as the specific people. It's more if they're doing something that's illegal or that needs to be exposed or that I should talk about just to bring up, to show people, oh, look what they're doing now. Things like that. But mostly it's better to focus on concepts and the kind of philosophy behind a lot of these things, which we do a lot. And those are good because a lot of conversations you can listen to whenever. I mean, you can listen to a year later and it's still relevant, as opposed to when you're talking about recent news. It's only relevant for so long, but like a conversation about the government and how it works and how they extort money from you, or how it's an oligarchy or things like that, tend to be things you can listen to in the future, and it's still relevant. You can learn something from it. But anyway, so they had the inauguration. He officially, from what I understand, took the presidency on the 20th. And on that day, there were it was like the whole weekend there were things going on. Like there were balls. they had some balls going on, and no, there was one ball I think on I think it was on Friday, either Thursday or Friday. And then there was the actual inauguration was on Saturday. And then on Sunday was the Women's March, which was for women's rights against Trump. And we'll get into that. It's the whole fucking thing to me is ridiculous. So you had protests all over the country. I just looked this up quickly as far as how many places they had them, and in these certain places, like it said in the Bay Area, there were a bunch of them. So, and when I watched one of the news stations just briefly, I can only watch government news for so long until I want to shoot my TV, not literally, but so I looked up just quickly where there were some of the bigger protests, and that doesn't mean I have all the places, but there were some in Europe. Berlin had a women's march, I know that. Washington had a whole bunch. They had and the two that I'm going to focus on the most is the one the day of the inauguration. That's actually the one I will focus on the most, and then the day after the Women's March. And there was one in Portland, there was one in LA, there was one in New York. We'll talk a little about that. That was the celebrity one, along with the Women's March in Washington. There were celebrities there too. So there were kind of two well, one seemed like all celebrities, the one in New York, and then at least the people that spoke. And then the one in Washington, I didn't watch the whole video or listen to the whole video, but it was a mix of celebrities and some other people, but it was mostly celebrities. But the organizers spoke, I heard them. So, and I believe there was one in Seattle, and I know in the Bay Area. And then I thought there was one in Denver as well. So there could have been other places. And again, I always remind people of this. Keep in mind that there's only that there's 320 million people in the country. The United States is the third biggest country population-wise in the world. And there's, I believe, 277 million over 18. So if you want to say, well, what about all, the kids? Well, there's 277 million over 18. And I'm still not sure if that's 18 to 65 or just 18, that's over 18, and including people over 65 or not. So even if you're looking at it that way, it's not a lot of people. Even if it was a million, it's not a lot of people. And of course, they want to inflate the numbers. And when you have celebrities coming out, people are going to come out to see celebrities. You had, at least for the Women's March. Now, they denied it for the rally or protest the day of the inauguration. They were right down the street. I don't know how close they were, but they were as close as they could get because you could actually hear Trump speaking. They claim that they didn't get any money from any investors or anything like that. Now, I think they're full of shit because they had C-SPAN broadcasting them all day. And then the C-SPAN feed was posted on YouTube. And, of course, the other march, the Women's March, they didn't deny it, that they got money to fund that. And, of course, they had a whole bunch of celebrities, so it shouldn't have been hard to get money. And that was where, I believe it was at that one, at least, that Madonna threatened to It might have been at the one in New York. I'm not sure. But I think it was that one. Madonna said she had thoughts about blowing up the White House, and I guess they finally investigated her, or said they were going to open an investigation, because at the time that I first saw that must have been before, because that was Saturday that I saw that. And then I saw how they opened an investigation. Like 20 minutes later, I saw an article for that. So she's a fucking nut. But the whole thing here is just, it's fucked up in general, because we'll go through all the things they protested, but basically a lot of it had nothing to do with Trump, to be honest. Now, they wanted to include Trump and everything to make it about Trump, but I'll give you one example now before we get into all the details. But there was a woman who her husband had been deported like 5 years ago. Either he was in jail 5 years or it was 5 years ago. Anyway, he might have been deported last year, but either way, he was deported under Obama. I know that. But they didn't mention Obama's name. The whole protest, his name got mentioned once or twice, and it was like a 5.5-hour protest. And they didn't mention his name. They do it in a fucked up way, because it was like they'd skip over it. Like they'd say by the government or by, but they wouldn't say Obama, except for a couple people. So, and Obama has, during his administration, he hasn't personally done this, but during his administration, more people were deported than I believe under any other president. So I don't know how they can ignore that, but whatever. So anyway, obviously he got deported, under Obama, but she didn't say anything. And then she turned it into Trump, like, oh, well, now that Trump's president, we'll never get him back, and this and that and whatever. And I guess he was in jail, she said, for cannabis, which I mean, I have no problem with that. Not that he was in jail, that, cannabis, possession of cannabis or whatever. She didn't go into details, but he shouldn't have been in jail if it had anything to do with cannabis, if he was selling it, if he got caught with fucking pounds, whatever it was. I would assume that there was more to it than that he must have got caught with a lot if he was in jail for a while. But she really didn't go into all of the details. But the point being that what the fuck does that have to do with Trump, except for the fact that, oh, well, we want to get him back, and they're assuming that he won't be able to come back now because Trump's president. Well, if Hillary was president, he probably wouldn't be able to come back neither, because of getting convicted of a crime. And I guess he was here since he was 8. So usually, now, being that cannabis is becoming legal in a lot of states, they may be able to somehow get around that, and I don't know. But Trump's backtracking on that anyway, and I guess he's going to sign some executive orders tomorrow, but he's even saying right now, I'm just focusing on people that could be a terrorist threat. And it's all bullshit anyway. We know that the U.S. government runs ISIS, and obviously he knows that now. There's no way that he doesn't know all this shit. He's been briefed already on whatever they, I don't know what they go through when there's a new president, but whatever they've gone through, he's aware, and I don't know. It's just, it's fucked up, but he's backtracking on that anyway. So there's probably a lot of things that he has said. Now, let me just say real briefly, because before I even get to, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, and I had an outline that I wanted to follow, but I do want to say for the record before I start to get into that I can't stand Trump, first of all. So I'm not a Trump supporter. I think he's an arrogant fuck. I think he may even have narcissistic personality. I was actually looking that up, and he fits it pretty well. So I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't even fucking, for people who listen to the show who know this, I don't even fucking believe in government anyway. And I believe that it doesn't matter. Well, I was kind of saying this earlier. Whoever the president is doesn't matter. They're a puppet anyway, for the most part. You know, for little things, whatever. They got to keep an illusion of freedom. So you have that aspect. But besides that, doesn't fucking matter. So I don't give a fuck about Trump. That's why I don't even really like talking about things like this. But I think this is important because what the protesters, especially the ones in Washington, the things that they were fucking saying are things that people need to hear about, because really it's not just the government that are taking our freedoms away. They're getting the support of more and more people. Now, granted, as I had said, you look at the whole population of the country compared to the amount of people that attended these protests, it's not even 1%. But they're trying to get more and more support. And I don't remember anybody talking like this years ago. And I don't know if it's the millennial generation or just more people are going in this direction. Because I think there's more people that are becoming more freedom-oriented. At the same time, I think there's more people that are becoming more socialist as well at the same time and want more government control, want government to run everything. Not now. I mean, they're fucking hypocrites because they say, well, Trump's not my president. I say Trump's not my president, but I would have said Hillary's not my president, Obama's not my president, because I don't support the government. I don't vote. I have no choice. I have no consent. They just push whatever they want on me, threat of violence. So to say that it's my government, I have no say in it. It's basically a corporation. So, but I'm consistent. You can't say, well, you know, if my person wins, and that's what they've broken it down to, you know, it's all division and about teams. You know, my team wins, then, oh yeah, government's fucking great. My team doesn't win. Oh, he's not my president. You can't do that. I mean, I guess you can, but it's bullshit. Your argument is bullshit, because if Hillary would have won, or Bernie Sanders is who they really want, because they're a bunch of socialists, at least these people that were protesting, they would have been happy. If Bernie Sanders won and didn't win the popular vote and won the electoral vote, they would have been happy and said it was a fair election. It's just how it works. And I'm not blaming it on either. I think the other side would do, you know, either side's going to do that because it's their fucking team. The actual people that are members of these parties and support them. And most people don't even fucking support or are a member of these parties, not the majority. They feel like they have to join them. And I think less and less people are believing in them. I mean, you look at the approval rating of Congress last year, I think it's went up, and the president and all of this shit. So the first thing that kind of pissed me off is on the government media, they were calling people anarchists. And I even heard the word ANCAPs or anarcho-capitalist, which I was really surprised I heard that. And that, I believe, was on some government media fucking station where they actually said that. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't remember which one. But they are not anarchists, first of all. Now, maybe you could say that some of them are anarcho-communists, if anything, but that would be the closest. And of course, anarchy means the absence of rulers, not rules, not total chaos, not nothing. So, and it's so fucked up when they're it's going to be anarchy and like that's a bad thing because they automatically assume, oh, that means there's going to be like fires in the street and people are going to be running around just murdering people, and like that fucking movie when they called it The Purge Anarchy. Anyway, that pissed me off. The agenda of, I talked about the power, I call them the powers that be, because that's the easiest name to call them than to go through and say, okay, well, the billionaires, the one percenters, the people that are part of the CFR, whatever. I call them the powers that be, the people that I think really run things. And their agenda, and again, this is all my opinion. It's based on, there's a lot of facts that I bring up, but this is my opinion. It's based on facts. It's based on an educated opinion, but it's still an opinion. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but if you look at governments throughout history, you even look at the definition of government. Now, they'll tell you government is about protecting your freedoms. It is totally not about that, and that's obvious. But that government, the purpose of government is to protect your freedoms. At least in the United States, that's what they'll say. But really, it's to obtain total control over everything and everyone. And then to have, and this is their ultimate plan, in my opinion, first with the United States and then at some point with the whole world, or maybe it's a regional and then totally combined thing. But and I believe this with all governments, actually. The thing that the United States has done is they are very good about keeping the illusion of freedom. They're very good about giving people enough to keep them comfortable so they won't protest. They're like, hey, well, I got my cable TV and my nice couch and my flat screen, and why am I going to go up and stand up and, risk that, even though, I'm extorted, I'm basically live in a police state, but, the government could murder me anytime they want. But, as long as I just lay low, then I should be okay. That's, I think, people's attitudes. People that actually even believe in any of this. And the people that don't are just ignorant, and they're just like, oh, yeah, everything's great. We live in a free country. Okay, yeah. So what I believe they want is, you're going to have the ruling class, which is probably less than 1%, and then everybody else will be just above poverty. If you look at the UN's plan, which I've talked about, so I'm not going to go into it in detail or anything, the 2030, it's basically Agenda 21, but for 2030, it has to do with redistribution of wealth and rich countries giving money to poor countries and all of that. I mean, so obviously that's part of the plan, is to have everybody, not, I would say, homeless and living in crack houses or anything like that, but not too far above that, like above the poverty line, but not that much over the poverty line. And then that's when you have the big fucking buildings with the 400 square feet apartments and that are easy to control and monitor and all that shit, but that's a whole nother story. So that's what I believe the agenda to be. And that actually comes into play when I talk about these protests, because essentially these protests kind of support this bigger agenda. And I don't think that's a fucking coincidence. Now, that doesn't mean that the people that are protesting are part of this big conspiracy or something like that. No, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that they're being convinced through government schools and government media that socialism is the best thing and that capitalism is evil and bad, even though what the government or the United States has now is not capitalism. They've never had capitalism, or at least what I don't even like to call it capitalism. I'll call it free markets and that's what I refer to it as. The U.S. has never had free markets, and that's just the free exchange of goods. If I want to fucking sell you whatever, this can of Monster that I'm drinking, which is half full, more than half full, and you want to trade me something for it because you want this more than or I want that more than you want whatever you're giving me, and you want what I'm giving you more than I do, and I'm confusing myself, but basically a fair exchange that we both get something out of it and we believe the value is worth it. So that to me is free market, and it doesn't have to work with trading stuff. It works the same way the economy works with money, and you buy things with money, or hopefully in the future we'll have a gold standard or actual gold or some kind of way where you don't have a government or somebody holding on to your gold where you can't get it, or that can just declare, oh, we're not on a gold standard anymore. So that's a whole nother thing. But we don't have a free market. And you hear them talk about capitalism over and over again, but there's never been, in terms of defining capitalism as free market, there is not capitalism currently. There's corporatism and there's crony capitalism, and there's never been a total free market. There has been levels of a free market, and it's been a freer market in the past than now. Obviously, this is the least freest market we've ever had, and I think every day is the least freest market we ever had. So I think every day we go a step further where, okay, that's the direction we're just going, because they're passing regulations. Big corporations, what do they want? They want regulations to keep out small businesses. Why do you think everything's getting consolidated? I've brought this story up so many times, but again, I don't know who's heard it and who hasn't, and we're on show 371 already. So when I was in college, I went to school for my BAs in film, and then I have an MBA, and I had to take this class. I don't even remember the name of the fucking class. Anyway, for the class, and I still have the book. It's funny because it changed so much. It was about how 9 companies owned 90-something% of the media, and now it's like 6 or 5. And when you think of media, right away you think of like TV and movies and stuff like that, but you forget about books and newspapers and everything. And this is, the internet was around, but it wasn't around as long as it's been. YouTube wasn't around yet. And they owned, like, AOL was Time Warner, magazines, every form of media you could possibly think of were part of that, 9 companies or whatever. But since then, now it's become like 5 or 6. So you have that in all of these industries where they're consolidating, and what that takes away is the whole concept of, the free market, in the sense of really what the free market is and people don't even fucking think about this because they're just ignorant. The free market is us, is really what it is. What it means is you can buy wherever you can buy your goods wherever you want to, whoever gives you the best deal, the best service. And there's competition, so places have to, you can't treat somebody like shit because they're not going to come back to your store. When the government owns shit or they have a monopoly on things like the police, they don't give a fuck because they're not going anywhere. They don't have to improve their customer service. They don't have to improve on anything. They're not held accountable. But when you have huge corporations, it's almost impossible to do that, because if people stop shopping at one Walmart or something, it's not going to fucking make a difference to them. And the more that you consolidate, there's no place else to go. So it gets to a point, and we haven't fully gotten there yet, but we're pretty close. Because if you look at something like department stores, I mean, how many fucking department stores can you name that are not owned by Walmart? And I thought Walmart even bought Kmart or something. I mean, there's Target. There's Kmart is still around. We had just seen one a couple days ago, but I mean, there's not many. There's not the small business or the one, the owner that owns maybe 2 or 3 of his store. So ultimately, that gives more power to the corporations. It gives less power to employees and consumers. So it affects you in both of those ways, because it will get to a point where everything's going to be corporate, where essentially it will be like the government owns anything anyway, because it will have the same effect. Because if there's no competition, you have that same effect. Like, they don't give a fuck because they don't have to. So that's how it's getting now, because I always use the minimum wage as the example. Like, Walmart doesn't give a fuck if you add a minimum wage. You know why? Because any small business is done. And the amount of money that they'll make from a small business going out of business and then shopping at Walmart will easily at least zero out the profit or the revenue, or at most it will increase your revenue and they'll make more money. So they don't care about shit like that. They want to put the small businesses out of business. So they'll pass laws that make it harder. They call it barriers to entry. Every industry has barriers to entry. The internet is the only thing really left where anybody can fucking start an internet business, which is great. However, the government has been putting out bills to restrict the internet for years. And they wanted to there was a bill, and this would have been really fucked up, where they were going to make you pay taxes in every state you did business to the state that the person lived. So if, say, I had a business in Nevada, because I live in the state of Nevada, and I did business with every other state. Say I sold, I don't know, whatever. And I had to pay tax to the state I was shipping to. I'd have to file fucking, 50 tax returns. And I'd have to deal with the laws of every single state. And it would just make things so much harder on me, the small business owner. Now, for a big corporation, it's not as bad. And a lot of them, now it's based on physical presence. So I'd only have to pay tax to the state of Nevada. So if I'm shipping in Nevada, then I deal with one state, one set of laws, one court system, whatever. So I could just imagine having to, I don't even know how they do this. They'd fucking have jurisdiction over you in another state and be able to extradite you from one state to another, even though you never went to that state. because they say you owe taxes or something. It's just, it was a ridiculous proposal. But it might have been to try to put people out of business. Anyway, right now, the internet is the easiest way to set up a business as far as barriers to entry. Something like a department store is impossible unless you're a multimillionaire. You can't just, go and set up a department store. Probably gas stations, barriers to entry aren't that hard. Well, at least they didn't used to be, because you'd see people that would come here, be here 10 years and save up a bunch of money and have a 7-Eleven. So I don't know what all the regulations are now, but the more regulations, the harder it is. But if you're already in there, like Walmart, and able to, just real quick, here's an example. It was in the Walmart movie, but they came to, or a documentary on Walmart, they came to this one town. So the town, to get the Walmart there, because, a whole bunch of jobs and having a Walmart, they gave them ridiculous tax breaks for years. Now, I don't believe in taxes, period. But the other business in town that ended up going out of business, the other department store, had to go out of business because they still had to pay taxes, so they couldn't compete with Walmart, who didn't have to pay taxes for a couple of years. The town also built like a road going right into Walmart and did all this shit for them. So, and that's usually what happens when Walmart comes to small towns, and they've gotten so many breaks and whatever. So I'm fine with not paying taxes, but, for everybody, not just Walmart. So I try not to shop there just because I don't even like them. Going there is not a fun experience, and they supposedly they don't treat their employees well and whatever. And corporations, the other thing that people don't think about it, corporations are government-created entities. A corporation is a legal entity. Without government, there are no corporations. And what a corporation does is just protect you from liability. So, another thing to think about. Anyway, getting into the protesters. So, as I had said, the whole thing's ridiculous because they say Trump is not their president. However, if Hillary won and Trump got more of the popular vote, but Hillary got more of the electoral vote, they'd be fine with that. Now, again, I don't believe in the whole system, period. Not saying the system of voting, but just the system of government. But if that's how it's supposed to be, and I understand why they created it this way, and it makes sense, the whole electoral college makes a lot of sense as far as campaigning in each state and as far as states having say. The whole thing was, it's not really like this anymore, but states were supposed to be more powerful than they are. They were supposed to be like sub-countries compared to, you had the federal government which was supposed to be less powerful. So meaning that with the electoral college, it gave more power to that state than if you just went by popular vote, because you have even though their electoral votes are more because the population's higher, which it should be, but it would make a lot of states irrelevant in some ways. It really would, in my opinion. Or you could say it the other way, it wouldn't, because now it does make some states irrelevant. But it's the setup of the system. Nobody broke the rules. So to say that, at least as far as it's based off of the Electoral College. Trump had more electoral votes than Hillary, and that's how the system works. If you want to change the system, then you have to go through the whole process of amending the Constitution. And if people want to protest or, try to do that, which to me, there's a lot more important things to do than bother with something stupid like that. But if that's what they want to do, then go do that. But you can't say that somebody stole an election or is an illegitimate president when they won based on the rules, because you approach it differently as well. Maybe he would have campaigned more in New York and California. I don't know. I'm just saying that you approach it in a different way. If you know that you're going to lose California, why bother even campaigning there, period? If it's popular vote, that might make a difference. So that factors into it as well. Now Trump's saying, well, the reason why I didn't win the popular vote is because millions of illegals voted. And you know what? That, I know people are just dismissing that. And again, I think Trump is a nut and on so many levels. But at the same time, why is that so far-fetched? You don't need to give. It would be easy for illegals to vote, especially if you have you don't even need a license or a picture ID. But a lot of states, you can get a license if you're here illegally. And personally, I don't believe in none of that neither. I don't believe that the government in general, now I know because of all these fucked up government laws, but in general, I don't like the fact that the government can tell you where in the world you can and cannot go, and you need their permission to go somewhere on public property. And you think about how land was acquired in the first place and all of that. And I don't really agree with that. So, however, based on elections, although again, I think they're totally rigged in a different sense, not in a vote sense, but in a money and political party and, all that. They're already decided who the candidates are going to be and all of that shit. That if people aren't there, that there should be a process, I guess, if that's what exists. So it's hard for me sometimes to look at things that way, because I look at things more like, okay, well, there shouldn't be a government in the first place anyway, and you should be able to travel wherever the fuck you want to. But if I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is what the system is and this is how it is, then yeah, if you're here and you're not a citizen, which is meaningless, and I hate that word too, or you haven't been here long enough, there should be a certain amount of time you have to be there to be able to participate in elections or whatever. That, yeah, you shouldn't be able to vote until a certain time, I guess. But regardless, he won the election based on the rules, and they're making it look like he did something wrong or he's not the legitimate winner. And then, of course, with his narcissistic, fucked up personality, he's going nuts. People are calling me illegitimate, and so I got to come up with a fucking reason. Well, it's because all these illegal immigrants voted. And I actually knew somebody, they told me that their friend went to vote and that they had already voted. And then they also told me that something like their father was dead and he had voted. So I don't know how you could really prove election fraud anyway, to be honest, because you don't really have to give much to register. And I don't understand the big issue with, and I'm not somebody who likes to give a lot of information to the government, period. But it's a little fucked up when they make you give all this information for everything else, because you could be a terrorist or you could be whatever. But for voting, they don't. So a bunch of terrorists couldn't move into the country and, elect who they want or something. I don't know. It's just like, it shows how much it's just bullshit. It's all bullshit. That everything's about an agenda and pushing that agenda and using what you can to accomplish what you want to accomplish regarding that agenda. So, but anyways, so to go through the main rally that I wanted to talk about was the one in D.C. during the actual inauguration speech. And we'll talk about the woman's one as well. But this was about 5.5 hours at least of C-SPAN. And again, if you can get on C-SPAN, you got to have some money behind you. It's just, and not that C-SPAN is like a major channel. I mean, well, actually it is. But I mean, it's not like, CBS or something. But at the same time, I mean, it's a national channel, national cable channel. Anybody who has fucking cable has C-SPAN. It's like a free fucking, I think it's on basic cable, because who's asking for fucking C-SPAN unless you like to sit and watch Congress all day? And some people actually do. I probably should watch more of their fucking stupid hearings so I could see the ridiculous things that they say. So the first thing what I want to do real quick is play. I couldn't believe some of the things I heard, and I've heard a lot of shit, man. And I'm just like, I mean, I can, but I can't get used to the fact that people actually believe this shit. And it's just like, what the fuck? Because they turn this into really just using Trump's name, but using it as a way. It's just like Black Lives Matter. What they did was they used it as a way to push a socialist agenda. So in protesting Trump, who didn't even get to do anything yet, they really just used it as an opportunity to protest their fucking agenda and how they want to change the country and the things they want. And one of the whole things had to do with changing universities. And that is just the shit that they got into with that. It was insane. And if you read the Black Lives Matter platform, it's kind of the same thing. And it's the same ideas. There's a fucking pattern here. And this is where they're going. So I'm going to play a clip from the YouTube video because it was 5 hours long. I didn't convert it into an MP3 or anything. And of this one lady, a Muslim lady who's wearing a thing on her head, a hijab or whatever. And you know what? I don't give a fuck what people say. I think that is disrespectful towards women. I really do. And the fact that they wear it even after they don't have to wear it by law, because is fucked up. Because the whole reason why they put that, I guess, into the religion in the first place had to do with, I was going to say oppressing women, but not really oppressing women, but suppressing women's beauty in a way, from what I understand. And they put it in there and said, I don't know exactly what they put in as a rationale in the Quran as to why women have to cover up. But I mean, we know the real reason why women have to cover up. And it has nothing to do with fucking religious shit. It has to do with they don't want other people looking at their women, or they can't handle the fact of fucking seeing beautiful women. I don't know. But it's disrespectful. And it's like women choosing to oppress themselves. And I hate when I see it. I do. Now, I wouldn't say anything because I believe in freedom and I'm consistent with my beliefs. If you want to wear that and disrespect yourself, now I have the right to believe you're disrespecting yourself. But if you want to do that, that's totally your right. That's up to you. But I don't understand why you would want to do that. I don't understand if you're a woman why you would want to be a Muslim, because despite what they say, and again, things are so fucking politically correct now, people would probably say, based off what I just said, that I'm anti-Semitic or something. And I guess I'm half Jewish. It has nothing to do with that because I don't believe in organized religion. So I'm half Jewish if it's a race, which I believe it is because my father looked Jewish when he was alive. Now he looks like ashes. But it's just the whole fact that, from what I understand, I mean, it's not just the countries. It seems like the religion. Now, don't get me wrong, along with probably every religion, but they just updated it. You know, you look at the fucking Constitution, women couldn't vote. So religion, governments, they've all oppressed women. However, in the United States, I know in some of these countries in the Middle East, women are still being oppressed. But in the United States, women are not being oppressed. I'm sorry. Nothing's perfect, but women are not being oppressed. And if you want to say women are being oppressed, then men are being just as oppressed as women, because there's benefits that women have, especially pretty women, that men don't, and vice versa. But as far as being, having equal opportunities, pretty much for the most part, men and women have equal opportunities. There's even opportunities I think that women have that men don't. But I'm not somebody who looks at something like that. Oh, men don't have this or whatever, that men are oppressed or something, because there are people that are saying now men are oppressed because of the whole focus on women. No, I don't believe neither are oppressed. Being a woman has its benefits and being a man has its benefits, and it is what it is. And I believe in women having equal opportunity and the same. I believe in everybody having the freedom to do whatever they want as long as they don't hurt anybody else. That's what it comes down to, no matter what your religion is, no matter what your sex is, no matter if you're gay or whatever you are. That's what I believe in. But I feel like people are acting like we're in like 1950 or something. And I totally believe, and I need to do a whole show on this, but that this whole thing is a government and a government media creation that we're in now, and that people were brainwashed into. And I've mentioned it before and mentioned that I'm going to do a show on it to get more specific, but it's like it's not real. It was created, and people, it's real, but it's not, because people fell for it. They got sucked into it. So anyway, I'm going to play this clip from this woman who I think is a fucking loon. And We'll be right back after this. Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. If you'd like to call in with your comments, 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or Skype in username Nonpartisan Liberty for All. And all that information, again, is at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com or in the event at our official Facebook page, Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Everything's just Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and you can pretty much find it. So we'll be right back after this.
Trump is illegitimate. He has no mandate. He does not represent us, and we're not going to pretend like he does. We're not going to collaborate with him. We're not going to extend a hand of friendship to him. We're not going to work with him. We're not going to acquiesce to any.
The woman actually comes up in a minute. So this is just I believe she was kind of the host in a way of this rally. And this is the Answer Coalition. So it's a whole bunch of groups that came together. Answer stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. And it's funny they put in Stop War because I don't remember them mentioning war once. And Trump had actually said he's all over the place. He had said that, not protecting these countries for nothing and not getting involved in wars that they shouldn't. But then on the other side, he said, well, we're going to have, a big, strong military to scare people away because that works. And he said he was going to destroy ISIS. So we'll see what happens.
Any of the elements of his agenda, none of them. We're here to say stop the Trump agenda. And I'm going to introduce Kristen again from the American Muslims for Palestine. Free Palestine.
Woo! Free Palestine! Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That means peace to all of you. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. I am here today to tell you that American Muslims...
Can we get like a new fucking saying? I mean, through this whole thing is sayings from the 60s. They're reciting them like fucking robots. And I'll talk about that a little later, but no justice, no peace has been around for a long fucking time that I can remember. Unless I'm thinking of something else. So, and really what that means, if you're saying no justice, no peace, well, wouldn't that be attacking fucking shit? If you feel you're not getting justice, then you shouldn't be peaceful? I don't know.
For Palestine has a very big anti-racism, anti-bigotry statement. We stand against all forms of bigotry and oppression and discrimination.
And you really think that's believable? Now, Palestine has a government. Last I heard, they were run by Hamas. Things change constantly in the Middle East. I don't know if that's changed. But I really don't believe that Palestine has that kind of government and that, they're not anti-gay or a lot of these things that the social justice people stand for. And I would say that, as I said, I stand for freedom as well. So I don't believe that the government of Palestine is really, she's representing them accurately. Like, oh, it's a great government and whatever. One, again, that's an oxymoron, because I'm not against like the U.S. There's a lot of people that will criticize the U.S. and then they'll go, and this happened with Palestine and Israel. They went and knocked Israel and celebrated Palestine and said how great they were or whatever because they were being bombed. I don't do that. If it's a government, my issue is with government, and I don't put down the United States and then go praise some other government. It's my issue is with the government, not the people of the United States or the people of any other country for that matter. If, you know, as long as they're not supporting, you know, a government that's murdering people. And, well, I guess you could say the United States government does that, and a lot of people are supporting it. So as long as they're not supporting a government that they believe is bad, I think a lot of people, they don't mean any harm. They think the government is good when it's really not. But we'll go back to the clip.
Including anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, Zionism, anti-black racism, our LGBTQI community. When we work for Palestinian rights, we understand that the struggle for the rights of Palestinians is connected to the struggle of all of us, because we cannot be selectively just.
And this is a white lady too. Not that matters, but like, I don't think she was born in Palestine. She may have, well, let me look at her last name. Maybe she married some, it sounds like a, well, it doesn't sound like a Palestinian name. I don't know. But she looks like she's American and sounds like it, and that maybe she moved to Palestine or married somebody from Palestine and then went there. I don't know. And maybe converted to a Muslim at some point. There are some people that are in the quote-unquote liberty movement that converted to Islam. And the issue I have with that is just, I don't understand. It's not because it's Islam. I don't understand people that, in general, and I don't have anything against them, because I know Christians, too, that believe in freedom and liberty. But religion is like a level below freedom and liberty, as far as you're supposed to follow blindly what a God says. So what happens when that contradicts with freedom or contradicts with your beliefs in freedom? So it's kind of a lot of people actually that I've talked to, that how they found or got into freedom and liberty and found voluntarism or anarchism or any of those libertarianism, any of those isms, is from researching religion and finding out for them how much bullshit it is. So, like, I don't believe in organized religion, period. I've never have. That's why I say, well, I'm half Jewish, but that's only if you look at it by race, because I don't believe in the religious part of it, and I never have. And then, you know, my mother's Catholic. My father was 100%, you know, Jewish, and my mother was, I guess, 100% Catholic. So
we have to be just for all, justice for all. That's what AMP is all about, and that's what we need to be about. And I can tell you one thing, America was great. America was great, and then the Europeans came to this shore.
Well, how the fuck would you know? That's a pretty fucked up thing to say. America was great, then Europeans came. So basically, and she looks European to me. I don't know. Basically saying that all white people are bad, that America was great with Native Americans. Now, obviously, what was done to Native Americans was terrible, and but you know, that was 200-300 years ago. Well, depending, I guess it wasn't all at once. And I was thinking about this, and I don't know how it worked. And when you take South America, Central America, and Mexico, I don't know enough about the history to say what happened when Spain came over. And it doesn't look like, as far as I know, that they slaughtered all of the native people. That they interbreed, just interbreeded, I guess would be the word, or, whatever. Because, like, Mexicans are a mix of native indigenous people to where Mexico is, and Spanish people. So I don't know how that worked throughout the rest of the Americas, besides Canada, because the French settled Canada. And, well, I guess even in Canada. But, and, in the United States, it going where instead of integrating into society or their society, and maybe they didn't want to, and which is understood, the United States just slaughtering, I don't know how many Native Americans. So, and it's hard to really get the real story on that, because you're going to get, a biased story of history. So, but, basically she's saying, oh yeah, everything was great until those white people, those evil white people. And I'd also, just for the record, I don't identify, that's the whole thing with race too. I don't really like getting into issues with race unless I have to, because and I have, like with Black Lives Matter, to expose things for what they are. Because it's not, I don't feel like I identify with any race, or I'm part, like, you have people like these alt-right motherfuckers that talk about, well, we need to save our race and breed with only other white people and make sure that our race doesn't die. I mean, who gives a fuck, really? And, I grew up, I've talked about it before, where in high school I hung around with all black kids, and I got exposed to racism from all angles, because white kids at the time would, say, wanna be nigga and stuff like that. And then there were some black, mostly, at least at school, I got along with almost all the black kids, but there were like one or two that would, fuck with me specifically because I was white or whatever, hanging around with all the black kids. And so I've seen all that, and I've seen racism up close and whatever against me, and just witnessing it. And it was no way as bad as, of course, it used to be. And even now, it's not as bad, at least what I see, as it was then. And it wasn't that long ago. So it's crazy to see how it's like I've watched this whole thing unfold, and it's just some people just don't see it. I think the majority of people in general, and even black people, I think the majority of them see the bullshit for what it is, and they just want to show on the news. You know, they want to go to like bad areas and find, you know, poor black neighborhoods that they can find, and then find like the most ignorant person they can find and put them on the news, and, you know, show a certain representation of black people, or do the opposite and then, you know, also show intelligent black people that are saying the same thing. They will only put on people that fit into their agenda, essentially. But in general, I think that they want people to think that the majority of black people live in poor black neighborhoods. And from what I see, that's just not the case. There's a higher percentage, but still there's a huge percentage of black people that have families just like everybody else and live in the same neighborhoods. And, you know, and maybe that's because I've only lived in big cities or right near big cities, but because, you know, you have the rest of the country in rural areas and whatever. But to me, the majority of black people are intelligent, hardworking people just like everybody else. But that's not what government media wants you to think, and they don't want people to see that because it doesn't fit into this agenda that essentially enables them to push a further agenda. And that we'll get into either later, or there's another show I want to do about how the BLM and conservatives and how both sides of that basically destroyed the whole issue of the police. By making it 100% about race, people started to stop talking about the police being an issue because they're an issue for everybody. And we live in a police state. And the people stopped talking about it. And government media never really covered that anyway. And even when they did start covering it, they only covered a couple stories. And they were very selective in the certain stories that they covered. So, but I don't want to spend too much time on that issue. So let me play the rest of this.
We don't hear enough about our brothers and sisters in the indigenous community, and no DAPL. And I'm telling you that all of us here need to ask our brothers and sisters in the Native communities and ask them, what can we do to help? And then we help. And if we are white, we need to start listening to our black brothers and sisters. We need to zip it and listen. We need to check our privilege. We can't think that because we come to some rallies and we're protesting Trump, that means we are not racist. Because privilege and power equals racism. And we need to check it every single day. Every day. We need to put our bodies on the front lines when they are coming to take reproductive rights away from women.
That's about the only thing I agree with her on. They want to use these words that are sound better, like pro-choice and pro-life. No, I'm pro-abortion. I don't think it's a good thing, but I think in certain situations, actually, I won't say that. I do think it's a good thing. I don't think people should use it as birth control, but I think in a lot of situations, people are better off getting abortions. I don't believe it's a baby yet. I don't believe any of that shit. So that's the one thing I actually agree with them on. But her fucking shit that, about Europeans and then white privilege and checking your privilege, and just because you do this doesn't mean you're racist. so you don't know if you're racist. And basically, it's just like, for me, I look at, nobody knows what a person's fucking been through. And you can't just, based on somebody's skin complexion, assume that they've had a certain kind of life, or they were able to accomplish whatever, or, you know, a lot of people work really hard for what they have. I mean, I've never had anything handed to me. It was very, very hard for me to get to where I'm at, and I'm not even anywhere close to where I want to be. And there was a lot of hard things I had to go through as well. And, you know, I didn't grow up with a rich family. I never even fucking lived in a house. Not that that's not a big deal. I always had a place to live. We had a nice apartment, you know, and that was fine. But I'm just making a point that to assume, what you're doing is you're assuming that you know something about that person, and you're basing it just on their color. And, you know, just shut the fuck up to this bitch.
We need to protect our trans brothers and sisters.
And to tell people what they need to do. And then when I do that, if I do that, I totally stop myself, because I don't tell people what they need to do. I tell people what I think people should do, or it'd be good if people did this, but I don't tell people what they need to do. And this fucking bitch, I don't know who the fuck she thinks she is, telling people they're racist, telling people what they need to do, you know, and all this shit. Somehow, I don't know, she's a Palestinian, even though, you know, she looks like a fucking white lady to me and talks like one. So, meaning she doesn't have like some foreign accent. So she has the right to say what she wants. But a lot of the stuff that's being said, and I'll go through a lot of other stuff as well, although we're running out of time, it's really getting ridiculous. I mean, people need to start taking responsibility for where they're at in life. Now, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, because it does. And I think it is a little harder for black people than it is for white people in general. And remember that, in general, because not everybody. But at the same time, it's like a lot of people have it hard, and some people take that and become successful, and some people don't. But this whole not taking responsibility and being owed shit. You're not owed anything. I don't know how many times I've said this on the show. You're not owed anything. People think they're owed all this shit just for being alive, or being a certain race, or being a certain religion. And you're not fucking owed shit. You have to earn that yourself. You know, except maybe your parents, you know, taking care of you when you're a baby. But you're not owed anything. And this is, I'll go into later how they're misrepresenting freedoms, and I've talked about it before. But, you know, if somebody has to do something for you, that's not a freedom.
The murder and the discrimination that they face. We need to stand against discrimination of the LGBTQI community. And we need to be on the front lines to help our undocumented brothers and sisters in the immigrant communities and people of color, because you cannot be selectively just. We now have the absolute embodiment of racism and bigotry about ready to take the highest office in this land, and it is no longer acceptable to be silent. We have to speak truth to power. Speak truth to power. And finally, I have to say for my Palestinian brothers and sisters, we cannot allow and stand by and allow Trump to undo 50 years of U.S. policy and move the embassy to Jerusalem. The entire global community does not recognize Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel. Their embassies are in Tel Aviv, and that's where our embassy needs to stay. And if we move our embassy, we're going to even weaken ourselves even more around the world. We are going to threaten our national security, and we're going to tell Palestinians that their rights to justice and liberty and self-determination don't mean anything. You cannot be selectively just. We need to amp up the kindness to each other. We need to lock our arms together, and we need to demand that we are just, and we make sure that this country sticks to the values that we supposedly espouse. And we can no longer ignore the struggles of everybody else. We have to stick together, because no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
So I wanted to play that just to give an example of the basically this whole rally was different people getting up and speaking. And I'll go through a lot of what they said and what their agenda was. So essentially, they did mention Trump like in the way she did, but really not much of what she said had anything to do with Trump about moving the embassy. And I don't give a fuck. Basically, I care about everybody being free, including people in other countries. I do. But I don't have time to help with, the freedom of everybody in every fucking country in the world. I mean, I barely have time to do what I'm doing now. And, if we ever get to a point where there's freedom and liberty, true freedom and liberty here, then, I'll start looking at other countries. But until then, I can't really concern myself except other than U.S. policy, meaning the U.S. dropping fucking bombs on other countries and the U.S. sending the CIA in to kill leaders or manipulate things or start a overthrow of the government or a coup or whatever. And that's what it seems like they're doing here. I totally see, and maybe that's part of it, and who knows how many people at these rallies are paid to be there, because it's definitely, you see more of these things now, and I think that's why. I don't think people have changed to that point, although if you look at the things that the government has done with government schools and media and the government themselves and the things that they put out there. But at the same time, I don't know that I think that people have changed to that extent. I think that, yeah, there's a lot of people, not a lot. There's some people that believe that, but I think a lot of these are political operatives that are putting these things together. And yeah, there's people that believe them, that go to them. And then I think there's people that go to them that may be paid to be there. I know that for a fact in ISIS, that some of the members of ISIS joined ISIS because they were being paid more than they were at their last job. There was a documentary on it, and they talked to people, and they said, why did you join ISIS? And, well, they pay me more money than fucking I was making, and I need this money. Not because they gave a fuck about the cause. So it's like I'm looking at this, a lot of these changes, and it changes in opinion and changes in, or changes in, I guess, attitudes and racial relations and all of these things. And then I read about things that the CIA has done in Iran, or what they just did in the country next to Russia that I can't think of the name of right now, Ukraine, where they send people in to essentially overthrow a government. I mean, there's tons of documented instances where they have done this, whether they've done it through money or they've done it through force, or they've gone in and, you know, built up an army of, not fighters, but an army of protesters, even ones that they got ideas in people's head and it looked like it was actually a real protest and these people were real protesters, but it was from the CIA initially planting those seeds. And I think that's totally what's happening here. Now, I don't think it's the CIA, but I think it's, whether it's the FBI or people, they mention George Soros and his money all the time. You know, I don't know that he's doing all of these fucking things, but there's other people out there. There's other billionaires. There's other political operatives. And the more I see these things, the more it looks like that's what it is. So this agenda, as I was saying, it went way beyond Trump. And again, for people who are just tuning in or didn't hear earlier, I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't vote, period. I've never voted in my life. And I can't stand Trump. He's arrogant. He has a big fucking ego, and he's a nut in a lot of ways. But at the same time, you know, I don't know which is worse. You know, him or these people that are protesting. So their agenda, I'll go through a number of things. The main thing, or the main couple of things in their agenda, is really socialism and social justice and equal rights, are what they call it, I guess. So they want everybody not only to be treated equally, because they're saying that, you know, women are oppressed and minorities are oppressed and everybody's oppressed except white males. And there is racism, as I said. I'm not going to deny that. Sometimes certain people are discriminated against for certain things, but things have changed a lot. And to act like things are how they were in 1960 is not going to cut it, because it's not the reality. Now, you can tell people that all you want, but it is not the fucking reality. Especially, I mean, women have more rights than they've ever had. They have just as many rights as men. They, you know, and when you look at this whole bullshit over, well, women get a third of a pay, whatever, that's if you take a whole, the amount of women that are working, the total salary, and just divide it. It's not taking into account specific jobs, specific job descriptions, experience, all of these fucking things. In order to do that, and the government would probably love to do this because it would give them more information on people, more specifics, and more control over companies. And that's why, you know, they are very careful about their job descriptions now, too, because they created a job for me, and to make it to get it up to a certain amount of money, they had to add in certain things and make it a certain way. And it was just a whole big fucking hassle. And that's because of the government. And it's because of this bullshit that, well, women don't make as much money as men and whatnot. And all I see is women with high-paying jobs. Some of them I actually know what they make, and in high positions. And that doesn't mean that women are never discriminated against. But that doesn't mean that men aren't ever discriminated against by women either. And not that I'm saying that that happens all the time or it's a problem or anything like that. But, you know, it doesn't mean it's not neither. But when it comes down to it, this is just, to me, it's a bunch of bullshit. The only things that I can say that are somewhat legitimate, but not to the extent, is that, yes, racism still exists. And especially the biggest, the most racist group is the government. And when it comes to, I agree, when it comes to the justice system and the police, that they do treat black people differently. Now, is it a huge gap like it used to be? No. But is there a gap there? Yes. It's government that is the issue. I think police departments are racist in general, or at least discriminate, or not discriminate, they prejudge. I don't know that it's that they hate black people or anything like that, because police, even black police, discriminate against black people. I think it's more they view black people, especially young black kids, as criminals. And I think that happens in the court system as well. So, but in general, the people that are talking about this are asking for more government. So it's like, I don't understand why. And I think it's a lot of the damage that Republicans have done with the words freedom and liberty, because they talk about freedom and liberty, but not real freedom and liberty. And they've kind of ruined those words. Even libertarian has been ruined, and it's been bastardized, because it doesn't have the, when people hear that, they just think of Republicans or, a former Republicans. So I don't know why you wouldn't be for freedom if the oppression that's basically the majority of it has come from the government. Now, it's come from people as well, but it's been backed by the government. So it's like now, when it comes to somebody being racist, most people don't have any fucking power anyway. And what the fuck are they going to do? It's the government that has the power, the police and the courts, to do something about it, where they can act on that prejudice. So that is a legitimate, in my opinion, issue. I don't think it's to the point that they make it out to be, they being media, but it is an issue. But what they want is, in order to help move things to socialism, they're trying to group all of these people into one group. And then from there, get them in that direction. So oh, you're oppressed, government is what can help you. We need more laws. We need, more laws to protect women. And these same people, it's such bullshit because it ain't real in the sense that that's what they want. It's just to exploit an agenda because the same people are anti-gun. Because if you really want to protect women when it comes to, because this is a legitimate issue that obviously women are smaller than men. Women are more vulnerable in general because they're smaller. Give a woman a gun, but they don't want to do that. There was a woman that was raped at University of Nevada, Reno, who had even a permit to carry. But she couldn't carry at school. She went out jogging and was raped. And women do get sexually assaulted, and that is an issue. And to me, that's one of the worst things you could possibly do. So when it comes to things like that, those are huge issues to me. But at the same time, numbers are being inflated, and it's being used again to exploit certain things. The government uses it to exploit. Really, they're exploiting women because they're trying to present this narrative to women to get them to want more government. But at the same time, if they cared about the safety of women, they'd advise them to get a fucking gun. Because if you ever heard, they call it an equalizer because it kind of evens up the field there, where you have a big man and you have a woman with a gun, makes things a lot more equal. So the other thing they want to do is suppress speech, believe it or not. And they especially want to do the psychologists. And I'll get to this guy or kid, or I couldn't tell how old he was, how he wants to totally what word did he use? Because I actually wrote it down. I can't find it at this point. I didn't write the word down, but he wants to re-engineer universities and how they operate. And they don't want to hear, they only want to hear their side. Their side is correct. Their side is good. They don't want to hear another side of an issue. They just want socialism. Things are unfair. People that make too much money, everything's corporations. And I agree with them on some things, but it's government and corporations. And they don't see the whole big picture. They don't see that or probably know anything about fractional reserve banking or the Federal Reserve. Without the Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking would not exist. And it's just more and more money being created, which creates inflation, which means your wages aren't worth as much. So the fact that we've gotten to a society where, by design, I believe that you can make pretty good money and still have to have both parents working if you have a family. Whereas 40 years ago, 50 years ago, you didn't. Well, maybe more than that, but. Or you could just graduate high school and get a pretty good job. Whereas now, even if you graduate from college, you have problems. So, they also want to continue to protest during Trump's whole time in office. Peace, of course, they say, even though there's been some violent incidences in some of these protests. And, fighting against Trump's racism. Now, when it comes to, well, I guess I'll get to this when we get to Trump, but there are instances that I see of, borderline racism, but I haven't seen anything when it comes to black people in Trump. I haven't seen it. They say, well, the Ku Klux Klan supported him. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center, who have an agenda and you can't really trust them, even they said that there's like 5,000 Ku Klux Klan members. And again, there's 320 million people in the country. That's nothing. And he can't control who supports him. So I can't really blame him for that. And I haven't heard him say anything negative. I'm not saying he hasn't, but I haven't heard anything negative about black people. The only negative things I've heard is about Muslims and Mexicans. But even when he talked about Mexicans, he was talking about people that were illegally here. I had listened to his speech earlier, and I have it. And if I have time, I'll play it. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, but I still think that it was pretty bad. And, of course, immigration is an issue, and that's a valid point. He said he's going to build a fucking wall, and building a wall is, to me, worse than it even seems, because it's not just keeping people out, which I don't agree with anyway. It's also keeping people in. The number of people that expatriate from the United States is rising. And they actually charge you, I think it's about $3,000 to renounce your citizenship, which is fucked up. You don't ask for citizenship. You're just born, and you have to pay to get rid of something that you never asked for in the first place. I mean, it's ridiculous. Black Lives Matter, I disagree with on a lot of levels, not because I'm totally anti-police, but if you look at their agenda, it's the same agenda as what I'm going through right now. And by turning it all, making it all about race, when police are affecting all people and the U.S. is becoming a police state, the conversation just totally disappeared. And then on one side, ammunition was given to the stupid fucking conservatives that defend police all the time. And you look at Trump, well, I'll talk about that when I get to Trump, but he obviously is a big supporter of police. So that's a valid issue. Abortion, I talked about. I support abortion, and I agree with them on that. Climate change, anything that they're talking about a fucking tax on, and that's the way to solve it. Yeah, I'm skeptical about anything that the way to solve it is to pay taxes on it. They even mentioned gun control. That was slipped in there. They mentioned co-ops. Co-ops are where people all own. If they work at a business, they automatically own part of it. I don't believe in that shit unless it's something that you build together. You know, you go into business with people, or if the owner wants to do that. I believe, again, it's in freedom. If you want to conduct business that way, that's your choice. But to feel it goes back to the I'm owed something. I work at this company, so I contribute to it, so I'm owed part of the company, even though I get a salary. You're not owed shit except whatever you agreed to. But just because you work at a company doesn't mean that you're owed part of the company that somebody had started in the first place, most likely in a lot of cases, came up with the idea, came up with the money by getting loans, put themselves in a situation where they could possibly lose all their money. You know, it depends. There's situations like Donald Trump where his father gave him $1 million, and if he would have lost it, it wouldn't have made a fucking difference. But the majority of people, that's not how it is. And just because you start working at a company, you're not owed this. And this is what a lot of people believe, that everything should be co-ops. It's a socialist view. and they want to get rid of capitalism, again, not even knowing what it is, or get rid of, free markets, not knowing what it is. They brought up, of course, the first woman president, the first black woman on the Supreme Court. So that's fine, but don't just vote for somebody because, we need the first woman or the first this or the first that. Vote for the best person. And it doesn't really fucking matter anyway, because, again, everything's controlled. They run shit how they want, and it doesn't even make a fucking difference. But, and if you really look at it, the amount of people, there should never be countries this big, because how does your vote really make any fucking difference? Even if you're voting for senator and you live in a small state like Nevada that has like 3 million people, I don't know how many voters, but it's got to be at least 1 million. And, even if you're talking about hundreds of thousands, that one vote, that's your say. Somehow you have some say in how the government's run because you have one fucking vote. That's ridiculous. To convince people of, and the first of all, the people are chosen for you between political parties and money. So it's like they put these two people in front of you and say, choose one, and make you think that you actually have a choice, and you don't. And then you get to really this whole positive and negative rights, and the right to a living wage, or the freedom. They're calling them freedoms. They are not fucking freedoms. Anything that has to do with somebody else doing something for you, you're violating their freedom. Because if you're getting a living wage, quote unquote, somebody's forced to pay that to you. So you're violating their freedom to keep their money. And then, of course, they promote minority rights, that they're under attack, and there's white privilege, and that women's rights, immigrants, LGBTQ, I think that's the acronym now, and Muslims, and all minorities their rights are under attack, that they don't have equal rights. And I think that's bullshit. Now, again, that doesn't mean that people aren't discriminated against. And right now, Muslims probably are up there, especially when it comes to Trump, as are immigrants, if you're talking about Trump. But in general, people's rights are not under attack based on them being a minority or falling into any of these categories. But that's what they want you to think, because it goes back to this pushing socialism, and you need the government, and you need the government to help you because your rights are being violated. That's the whole fucking exploitation by the government. What it comes down to is all our rights are under attack by the government. So I don't disagree that our rights are under attack, but it's not just certain races or certain minorities or whatever. And also, when it comes down to it, people have the right to discriminate. As long as you don't assault somebody or steal their property or whatever, I'm talking about you have the right to hang out with who you want. You have the right to date who you want. You have the right to, be around who you want. And the government wants to push this down people's throats. They want to make sure, Obama was doing studies to make sure communities were integrated, because if they're not, that means it must be racism, not that just people didn't move in there for whatever reason. If somebody reports that they believe they weren't given a loan or a house because they were discriminated against, and that's one thing. But to just go looking for it, it's all about the government getting involved, because the more of it you have, the more that you can convince people, you're convincing people they need the government to step in and do this. They need to pass a law where people make more money. They need to pass a free healthcare law. They need to pass this. And all of that stuff they're saying are rights as well. Affordable housing and free college and banning hate speech or speech they don't agree with. Those are all rights, they're saying, or freedoms. They are not. Because you're violating somebody else's freedom and every fucking single one of those things. The right to carry a gun doesn't violate anybody else's freedom. Although they tell you, well, if people carry guns, then I could end up dead, so you're violating my freedom to not get shot. And that's such bullshit. Or your right to put what you want in your body. Those are rights. Those are negative rights. Positive rights are not rights or freedoms. They are handouts or abuses of other people's labor. Unless they agree to do that, but you're not owed it. So this one guy wants to fundamentally change universities. I wish I knew, I wrote down exactly where he was on the what minute on this file, because I did write down somebody else, but I don't think it was him, because he really gets into some fucked up shit. But he talks about, now I lost my place here. He talks about, first of all, education should be free. You should have universities should promote socialism, promote that capitalism is evil and the patriarchy is evil, and promote LGBT rights. He wants to make universities socialists and communists, and all these people are, of course, clapping. Socialist and communist institutions that hold one viewpoint, and really no questioning of this viewpoint, not having anybody else who has another viewpoint speak at any of these universities, keeping them out and basically banning their speeches. So having really a socialist university that teaches positive freedoms and that you're owed all of this, and that everybody has all of these positive rights, and that you're to defend the rights of anybody who's different or whatever. I mean, that's not something that schools should be teaching. Now, I agree. I stand up for people's rights as far as you have the right not to be harassed or punched in the face or robbed or hurt or anything like that. But what other rights are you talking about? It's like it's getting to a point where when we're talking about rights, it's more laws, more government. What other rights do you need when it comes to laws? Because there's plenty of fucking laws, probably too many of them, that have to do with things like that. But essentially, he wants universities to teach socialism and all of their agenda that they have. That's what colleges should be. I think I added the communist, but that's how it came off. And that's how I interpreted it. So, the groups that attended, I had said how it was a coalition, the Answer Coalition, and now to stop war and end racism, what it stood for. Black Lives Matter New York, New York Worker Center Federation, Pan American Community Action, Migrant Workers Association, United Nations Anti-War Coalition, Kentucky Workers Union, the Philly Socialists, the African People's Socialist Party. So, I mean, even a lot of and there's more groups than that, but those were the ones that I was able to catch and jot down. Some of the disturbing comments I put as important comments, but they were more disturbing than anything, and I got to get through these quick because we're approaching we're actually a little over already, but that's fine. But they mentioned, and I don't know who it was, and I forget how they phrased it. It was like something cisgender normalcy or something. Basically, that if you say that being a heterosexual is normal, that's discriminatory if you have that opinion. And not to say that if you're gay, there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I believe people should live however they want to live and do whatever they want to do, and that it doesn't make somebody not normal if they're gay or if they're trans or if they're whatever. And I don't give a fuck. Meaning, not that I don't care, but just meaning whatever somebody is, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. As long as they're a good person and they're nice to me, and they believe. It's important that they believe in freedom, but I'm not going to hate them because they don't believe in freedom and liberty. I think maybe they just haven't been exposed to it or are caught in a, brainwashed society, which is easy to do. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that it's normal to be heterosexual. It's this political correctness that we're getting into. Somebody said Donald Trump will put blacks back into slavery. They put they said free voting is freedom, but they talked about an old story about one of their relatives that wasn't able to vote, and they were black, and then they said that voting is freedom, which voting is meaningless and pointless at this point. But I understand the rationale if in a person's mind that was black 50, 60 years ago, when I still don't think it meant anything back then too. I think things have been controlled from the beginning, but people didn't realize that at that point. They blame Trump for hate, not for hate in general, but because of Trump now, people are going around committing acts of hate, I guess, and it's under Trump's influence, so that's his fault. That Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump are examples of racist homophobes. That's another thing. I haven't heard Trump say anything about the LGBTQ community. That I haven't heard him say anything about that. That doesn't mean he hasn't, but as far as I know. So there's a lot of stuff. It's like they're all being, just like he's being labeled as racist against black people. I haven't heard him say anything negative about black people at all. So I won't say the same about immigrants or Muslims. But I haven't heard him say anything about black people or the LGBTQ community. And again, you got to keep in mind that I'm somebody who does not like Trump. I didn't like Trump way before he ran for president. I always couldn't stand him. I was a big Howard Stern fan, and he came on, used to come on Howard Stern all the time, and I could not fucking stand him because of his arrogance and his I'm so great and all this shit. And it's like, motherfucker, the only reason any girl that you've ever been with that's good looking got with you in the first place is because you're a fucking millionaire. He's just an ass. Like I said, I really believe he has narcissistic personality disorder. And then he's so insecure that he's got to sue people for, you know, how many times he's threatened to fucking sue people for making statements about him. That's the type of shit you got to worry about. But people forget that even in society now where Obama really set a precedent by the type of executive orders he made. And now maybe some of those fuckers are thinking about it. The ones that wanted him to write executive orders for immigrants and for this and for that. They're thinking about the fact that, oh, well, now what happens when somebody like Trump gets in? So Obama, it wasn't the amount of executive orders. It was the type of executive orders where he was borderline writing laws, and they're not supposed to do that. Now the government can pretty much just get away with whatever it wants anyway. Gloria Allred called Barack and Michelle Obama great leaders, which was kind of funny. Somebody had mentioned they're fighting for their existence and equality. And someone else had mentioned there's a war on Black America by the police state. No, there's a war on everybody by the police state. Maybe not everybody, because not the, elites, but everybody else. I've been a victim of that war. Luckily, I'm still alive, at least for the time being. I talked about the KKK endorsement, that they blame him for that. Which really I kind of think is unfair. And again, I'm looking at this just from a somewhat objective standpoint, because I believe in freedom and liberty, but Trump doesn't. So like I said, I can't stand Trump in any fashion. So I'm not trying to give him a break or anything like that. I'm just when it comes to him, I'm looking at this objectively, and a lot of these things I think are definitely unfair. Plus, the whole thing that they're protesting when he hasn't even passed any laws yet. He just talked a bunch of shit, really, in a lot of ways. I think half the things he said he was going to do, he's not going to do. He's going to fall in line like every other president. And more freedoms will be taken away. And at the end of the Trump presidency, whether it's 4 years or 8 years, will be that amount of time closer to the ultimate goal of totally having no freedom and the government controlling everything. The amount of freedom now we have is limited. I mean, people just don't think about it. They don't think about spying. And that's the other thing. You have all these people fucking protesting, some moron like Trump. What about, nobody said anything about the government spying. Nobody said anything about there was one person, or there were a couple people who said about the police, but nothing about the militarization and living in a police state, except, if you're black, that came up. But there was really only two things that I agreed with, and I'm going to get to one of them. And one's abortion, of course. And, of course, I totally disagree with Trump on that. The way they put it was they want to end cis normativity. So they want to end what I had said at the beginning about straight being the norm. So that needs to go. It needs to be that, I guess, being gay is the norm, or there is no norm, or whatever. I don't know. There are certain things, and I don't care, just whatever, but there are certain things that are genetic that you can't get away from. I know people like to, but, So that was that. As far as the protesters, they just kept repeating these ridiculous lines from the 60s. They were like robots repeating them. The Muslim woman, I talked about her, it kind of really stood out because of her comments, the clip I had played. And I talked about the agenda beyond Trump, that this is about socialism and communism, more government, wealth redistribution. Everything is about race, gender, and sexual orientation, and it's about dividing people. And that there's no way they weren't funded by political groups and political operatives. And when I talk about Black Lives Matter and really kind of integrate it into this whole thing of what I think is really going on, I'll talk more about that, because I really do think that what the CIA does in other countries, they're doing something similar here. Whether it's the actual CIA or whoever, it's really irrelevant. But they're pushing the country in a certain direction, the direction that they've been wanting to go in for, I think, basically forever. I think when a government starts, they tell you, we need a government to protect your freedom and liberties. But really, even if you look at the United States, who ran the country from the beginning? The rich white landowners. And that's how it started, and they did a good job of keeping that illusion of freedom, instead of, if you had a dictator just stand up and say, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, people have much less to lose when it comes to that situation, because a lot of people would say, I'm not going to live like that. Whereas when you do it the way the U.S. does it, they've created an empire. But most people don't even know that, because they do it secretly, or they promote it like somebody else started the conflict. They create a group like ISIS or whatever. They always need an enemy, because they always want you to think you need government. And they have to keep reminding you that you do. So I was going to kind of go into Trump, but I've talked, I think, enough about him and what I think about Trump, and I don't think much of him. So I think on that point, we will end the show. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And tomorrow we'll be back, as we are every other Wednesday, with Ken Shorgen to talk about geopolitics and the economy. We'll see if, since Trump took office, if the stock market or gold prices. Actually, I can just look up gold prices, but if there's anything on the world financial fronts that are going on, or if things are changing, among other things. So, again, thanks everybody for listening. As always, I appreciate it, and hopefully I will, or you will hear me tomorrow. So, take care, everybody. Have a good night.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.